SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
The political winds are blowing in Tornado Alley here in the States, and there's some good news and some news that seems bad, but may not actually be news at all. Take cover. We are discussing all that and more on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, managing editor of SBC Media, joined by media manager Charlie Horner, who I assume has never experienced a tornado?
Never.
Do Brits get tornadoes?
No, that would be highly unusual.
Well, there's like your high concept movie right there.
yeah.
You know, what tornado at Westminster Abbey or something like that. Kentucky gets them on occasion. When I was little, I had to go down with like the tornado warnings, but the area of the country where tornadoes are most common. Oh, Charlie is making a face like I just told him I survived a shipwreck. It's super common. It's not, you just go to your basement, sit there for a few minutes.
Oh,
leave.
I thought tornadoes were like lethal disasters.
They can be if you are where they exactly touch down. But like when you have the warnings, it's a fairly large area.
Ah, okay.
So I mean, I was like 8. I remember my mom was at the mall and she had to go like into the hallway where the bathrooms were, but she called to be like, you gotta go downstairs. And I went and got my stuffed animal net off the wall and took them all downstairs with me and just hid under my dad's desk covered in stuffed animals.
Wow.
Which, like, if you're gonna die, not a bad way to go. But way off topic. I get mad when we talk about the weather on here, so I'm totally pot calling the kettle black today. Anyways, brought that whole Tornado Alley thing up because that part of the country seems to be the only place where anything related to sports betting is happening legislatively, everything else in a holding pattern like Hawaii. Quick update on Hawaii. It has gone to what is called conference, which means that when the Senate and the House disagree on the version of the bill and it goes back to the original chamber can be like, oh, what's up with these changes? Let's chat. This seems to be par for the course in Hawaii. They like batch conferenced like 20 bills, including sports betting. So I think we're still proceeding forward with that one as planned. And I'm sure Tom and I'll get back on here and talk more once we actually get like a full decision. But in the meantime, one thing we did get a full decision on was the Kansas sports betting framework. And Charlie, I mean, it's a little tough reading it to understand. Do you have kind of questions about what's been going on?
Yeah, I guess, the last time we talked about Kansas, it was all sunshine and rainbows because sports betting was legalized and it's launched. And you would think that apart from the monthly revenue updates, that would be case closed, but it's back. My question is,
why?
Yeah, what's going on?
So essentially, it's part of like a larger bill, which seems to be the case, right? It's a lot of kind of refining various parts of the government, broad-reaching stuff, and essentially what it does right now, the Kansas Lottery is who regulates and oversees sports betting in the state. And they're the ones who kind of, decided these operators are allowed to go. They have partners with these casinos, all very like letter of the law. This is not like Washington, D.C., where there were like multiple bidders and people got turned away and stuff like that. So essentially, they're saying you can't re-up a contract without going to the lawmakers first. Some of this might be because we've seen so many other states go back and refine the tax rate, the licensing fees, that sort of thing. But like, as passed, I had to call a couple people on the operator side to be like, am I right that this is kind of a nothing burger that we're doing a podcast on? But I think it's important to do just so that people know it's not a sound the alarm situation. So this pause on contract negotiations lasts until the end of the fiscal year in 2026, which for us is like end of June. June 30th. No operator license for any of the operators that are in Kansas, of which they are 6. None of them expire until mid-2027. So nobody's going, we'd have to get to this point again next year and extend it another year before we ever get to a point in which this is going to get negotiated, is my understanding.
Yeah, and this is something that the Sports Betting Alliance has kind of underlined as well, that nobody's going offline just yet. We've got a long way to go until we have to hit the panic button. But it's an interesting move for the legislature to make, I think, and it's indicative of the maybe changing perceptions towards sports betting that some of these lawmakers have compared to the sort of the golden era of sort of 2019 to 2022 when all these bills were coming and passing and these markets were launching.
I think, too, throughout state legislatures, and this is a big explainer of why Hawaii is taking action when they haven't, there is just a general freak out, kind of similar to COVID, of federal funding has been drastically changed as the result of the new administration. How do we make up for that at the state level? And taxing vices is going to inevitably be like top of the list. It doesn't surprise me. North Carolina just came out with a plan to potentially, the governor in their budget proposal was like, let's double sports betting tax from 18 to 36.
I mean, it doesn't really surprise me considering the macroeconomic situation, and I guess for the lawmakers, hitting sports betting operators with these bigger taxes rather than going for those sort of easier but potentially, more impactful taxes on consumers is probably the easy way out. So yeah, I can understand why they're doing
doubling it's going to make you a lot more money, but like there's only, it's a low margin business. Like it's, even though we have like the inflated handle by comparison, I think about like if someone told me tomorrow Kentucky's sales tax is doubling, the state would collectively lose its mind.
Oh yeah, there'd be riots in the streets.
Like, I'm sorry, you want us to pay 12% on everything? Like, that's insane. So it just like, I don't know where, I guess it started with Ohio, which to be fair, it was very, very low. 10 to 20 is not as big a jump, really. But then everybody's like, okay, so we can just double it. And I'm just like, dude, if you're at like 18, 36 is a big difference. It's like it's over a third of what you're making. That's so aggressive. We've gotten off track again. Sorry. But just putting context on this Kansas thing again, important that, I don't know what they will do when they potentially revisit things. I think, this is just forward planning to some extent. I do want to point out this is a state where there are market access deals. What I am less certain about is in terms of broader casino licenses, if any of those operators' casino licenses are up for renewal in this period.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would throw up a couple of awkward questions, you would imagine.
But again, what are they going to do? Close the casino? Like, that's not going to happen. We've seen from Resorts World, we're never closing the casino is the answer. But I do kind of want to point out these market access deals are done for long periods of time at this point. Early on, you may have seen like year-to-year kind of deals, but now that the industry has settled a bit, these are like 10-year contracts.
Yeah, these are, average a decade. Yeah.
So for the legislature too, I'm sure the casinos aren't thrilled that are like, I'm sorry, you want to kick this person out potentially who I signed like a 10-year deal with?
Yeah. The lawyers are looking at that one with bated breath, I would imagine.
Yeah, this one kind of came out of nowhere. I will say, I think people who are deep in government affairs kind of knew this was on the horizon, but this was, for a brief moment on Friday, Twitter exploded and they were like, Kansas is shutting down sports betting. And thankfully that was not what happened. So good news on that front. Better news ahead. We're going to take a quick break and come back to talk about a state like Hawaii that is potentially moving towards expansion.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. Moving up north from Kansas to its neighbor Nebraska, Nebraska is actually moving towards expanding from retail sports betting into online sports betting. I got a civics question for you. Are you aware, Charlie, of what a unicameral legislature is?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Good job.
However,
define it.
Yeah. Well, I thought, after doing this podcast for the last 18 months, 2 years, I'm becoming quite good at US politics and US civics. And then there's states where we don't really have a separate House and Senate. We just do it all in one chamber. And I just go, back to the start.
They're the only ones that do it this way.
Why?
I don't, because we all have to have our things, right? Like if you're from Kentucky, you'll be like, technically we're not a state, we're a commonwealth.
Everyone's got to stand out, have their own little...
everybody wants to be special. But you are right that Nebraska is the only state in the union with a unicameral legislature. Other states will be like, oh, we're a House of Delegates, we're an assembly, we're not the House. But they just have like one big group that does things. So I'll be honest, reading this story from Tom, I was like, I can't believe a British person is teaching me civics right now. But I am kind of learning the process of Nebraska politics in that essentially it goes through like 3 rounds, is my understanding, of the same group kind of approving and voting on it. So it's through round 1. And then they will go through a second round and then a third round. And because it is a constitutional change, it will go to the voters if approved. So some steps to go, but voters, retail sports betting has been there since 2021. You've seen a large number of people going, they'd rather just drive to Iowa and bet. It's closer to do that and bet on their phones than drive to a casino in Nebraska and bet there. Also, because it's a constitutional change, this is kind of normal too. You need 3/5 approval or 60% versus a simple majority. Which is not where we're at currently. Right now, these measures are passing at a majority, but not 60%. We shall see. But it's forward progress in a year where we've had no forward progress.
Yeah, at this point, we'll cling on to the success that we can get. There's only three vote swing that we need. So they currently have 27 votes in favour. They need 30. So, there can be a few conversations going on in the back halls of the legislative chamber, and hopefully we can change those people's minds.
Potentially, we shall see. As Tom notes in his story, we'll have the link in the description on this. This is par for the course, though. There were 3 submissions in support and 51 against. That's not necessarily reflective of the entire state's opinion of sports betting. It's like any review, right? Like you leave a review either because it's the greatest thing ever or because something's the matter with it. You don't leave a review when a restaurant was just fine. So you have a lot of people that are, concerned, and rightfully so, vulnerable populations, this sort of thing. I'm surprised it doesn't seem like there is as much of a discussion about cannibalization, given that there are, I believe, kind of regional casino operators in that state. I don't think that they're all like Caesars and huge organizations here, but
perhaps there would be some sort of market access agreement framework that might be arranged in Nebraska as well.
Yeah, I think they do that to some degree already. Again, things I should have done in advance of the podcast, but just by comparison, in Mississippi, recall that the bill to expand is always like the local casinos want nothing to do with it. So we've got Harrah's, Hard Rock. I'm seeing Penn casinos. I'm seeing a lot of tribal casinos. So I think that this is one where I'm surprised to not hear more about cannibalization. You've got that new association against iGaming that includes Churchill Downs and some other smaller groups that I'm wondering, as this goes, when it comes up for the second round, if we'll start to hear about the cannibalization at all, because unlike other states where you just roll out online right in tandem with retail right away, in states like Mississippi and Nebraska, we've seen in Maryland with the iGaming debate, because they rolled out retail first on sports betting and then later, you have an established industry that you will, there's no question, nobody debates the cannibalization of retail versus online sports betting. It's not up for debate the same way casinos are. You're going to lose 70 to 80% of that revenue. So surprised to not hear more of that, right?
I think so. But like we said earlier, this is a bill that has quite a few hurdles to overcome. So maybe when it gets to the third reading, they start to come out. And if it gets past there, you can bet your bottom dollar that by the time the general election comes around next year, that campaign is going to be in full swing and they're going to be really campaigning against it.
That's a very valid point. Yeah, if you are saving the coffers for the public vote on this, I can already envision the tribal casino ads pointing out who's not going to have a job anymore if you decide to do this. And as we've seen in California, that can be very persuasive. All right, so we will keep tabs on that. We will keep tabs on Kansas, even though there's not much to keep tabs on, as well as Hawaii. Florida sweeps came out of one Senate committee only to go to another Senate committee. So lots of tiny movements, no big earthquakes to keep up with the weather, natural disaster metaphor of this podcast. In the meantime, Charlie, what's going on in your neck of the woods and the kind of content you've been putting out across the SBC network?
Sure. So this week we had a feature with Lead Star Media, one of the account manager team leads there in their North American unit. And they're talking about, again, the lack of state openings for iGaming and sports betting and the potential for affiliates to find growth in the sweeps sector, something that we've spoken a lot about this year. So that's an interesting one. I would encourage people to go and read that one. And then on SBC News, we spoke with Mike DeGraff, who's the Chief Compliance Officer at BetComply, and he was sort of talking about the M&A process and how operators really need to sort of conduct proper due diligence when it comes to their transactions, because we're seeing a lot of examples in Europe and in Brazil where sort of some of these transactions are sort of ending in sort of regulatory enforcement action, and it's because what he argues is a lack of proper due diligence.
That's pretty timely, given the Sega Sammy Stake Logic news of this week. So that's awesome. The Lead Star one, I just want to say, really interesting stuff. And just, I liked the insight into why there's a certain amount of comfort in the uncertainty around sweepstakes legislation, or sweepstakes legality and regulation, and why that's kind of an indicator that there's no overnight off switch that's coming, and you just have to decide if you're in or you're out. So be sure to check out all those, check out everything else going on across the SBC network, and as always, check out tomorrow's episode of iGaming Daily.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.